Erica Hay, 30, Warnbro, Western Australia.
I think we're in mourning and grief. Like, I personally am finding this devastating, waking up every day and seeing a new number.
Hannah Maguire, 23, Scarsdale, Victoria.
This is a reminder to the world that we're not just screaming for no reason.
He killed our sister while she was out running.
People don't just gather on street corners for nothing.
1, 2, 3, 4. We won't take it anymore. He killed our sister while she was taking her son to after-school activities. And after he strangled her to death, he strangled her son.
We've been marching on this issue for decades and decades and decades.
No, he's a violent man!
My grandma's been doing this since she was 18. I'm now 30.
She must have done something to deserve it.
Every 4 days, a woman is killed in this country.
Molly Ticehurst, 28, Forbes, New South Wales.
I think the whole country is in shock.
Samantha Murphy, 51, Ballarat, Victoria.
Partners that have histories of violence still end up killing their girlfriends, killing their wives because nothing's done about it.
This is a national crisis.
Wherever we go, yes means yes and no means no.
We know there are good men out there, but they're using your body as shield to hide bad men behind. So if you're not active and you're not present, all you're doing is shielding bullshit.
We have to drive change, and change occurs when people speak out.
The men in this society need to do better. They need to speak up. They need to educate their friends. They need to do better.
We've had enough being angry and outraged and sad and grieving for women who've lost their lives.
Emma Bates, 49, Cobden, Victoria.
I have thousands of people in my DMs. A lot of people are saying, here's my story, because I might not be here tomorrow.
Bonnie Lee Anderson, 39, Charnwood, Australia, Capital Territory.
We need to change the culture. We need to change attitudes. We need to change the legal system, because it's not enough to support victims. We need to focus on the perpetrators and focus on prevention.
The future is ours, and we are reclaiming our power, our autonomy, and our voices.
Gosh, we've been having this conversation for so many years. Like, how do you not get angry, you know? Because it just is like, it feels like nothing either ever gets done, but also how do you fix the problem? How do you step into somebody's childhood and change it, you know? Because ultimately, the way people grow up, how they learn to treat women early, all of those kind of things are a product of the families they grow up in, and then how they enact that later. Like, how do you change that? And then the impact, the thing that really we don't often talk about is that generational impact that can happen. You know, I've not seen violence against women personally, but I have certainly felt the impacts of violence against women in generations before me, and how that comes down through family and the way that that impacts people around them, the psychological impact to that individual who's experiencing it, people who witness it, how they then, you know, live out their days and parent and do all those kind of things. Like, it is not just that one instance or those instances. It really has the most horrific effects on people's lives and then feeds through for years to come in their children. You know, it's horrific.
Do you feel encouraged seeing all of these numbers on the streets and the politicians, or do you question what this leads to?
No, I'm so encouraged by it, because I think really it's only this kind of stuff that makes anything happen, honestly. Like, we've had this conversation so many times, and really the government watching people walk out like that on the streets, it's like, oh, well, if we do nothing here, then we're going to really get hit at the polls, you know? And so the government really has to step up. They talk about a big game when it comes to women, and they have to do something, you know? But also it's like, how do you fix it? Yeah. It's a big problem for them, you know?
Huge.
Massive.
On all of these marches, and there were 17 across 3 days right around the country, we kept hearing that men need to step up and join the conversation. It's an issue that the hosts of The Imperfect spoke about this week on their podcast, and it's since gone viral. Hugh, Josh and Ryan join us now. Fellas, on your podcast, you spoke about how it must feel to be a woman in Australia right now. What was it that prompted you to have that conversation?
I'm a little bit ashamed to say the answer to that question is that 2 weeks ago, with all the horrific stuff that took place at Bondi, we were away on our, doing our tour, and my wife Penny sent me a text message at night saying, "Why haven't you asked me about what's happened at Bondi? Why haven't you asked me how I feel? Are men even talking about this? Do men even care about this? And it made me kind of realise that, yeah, we're not really talking about this as men, and we should be talking about it. I asked these guys in a production meeting, and they both said, yeah, we don't really talk about it with our male friends either. So we kind of, we decided to have a chat about it in the hope that other men would hear this and potentially do the same.
Well, catch us up. What did you talk about? What came out of that conversation?
We wanted to have just a chat, and we didn't really have necessarily a huge plan, except for the fact that we wanted to just talk about it and talk about how we were feeling about it, how our partners were feeling about it. One of the things we spoke about was imagining that there were a lot of men, like thousands of men out there on the streets, and they're only targeting men. And really to prompt me and for any men, really to prompt us to think, like, you know, how do women feel? Like, you know, really to walk in their shoes and to imagine how that would feel to be targeted.
What has the feedback been like from the men in your audience?
Really good. Yeah. We received like some really nice messages saying that they hadn't heard anything like this before, and they were even surprised to hear the numbers that we were talking about, the women who have been killed recently, and they really just wanted to put their hand up and say, how can we be involved? How can we get involved in the conversations? And
I feel like one of the most common things I got through Instagram actually was messages from women saying that their husbands came home, or their partners or their boyfriends came home and asked them how they're feeling at the moment, and that it clearly meant a lot to them.
When your wives and girlfriends told you what women are feeling at the moment, I mean, what did you make of it? Were you shocked that so many of us are feeling unsafe?
Yeah, I think, me personally, I felt a little bit of shame that I hadn't realised. I think it's, which I think leads to one of the reasons why maybe I don't have conversations with my friends. I think there's obviously a built-in assumption that between my male friends that the behaviour is abhorrent and disgusting, so it kind of, there's this weird way of going, well, it doesn't need to be said because it's so obvious. But I then felt this sense of sort of shame that I wasn't having these conversations because clearly a lot of people, the issue is suffering in silence.
We're not moved by this simply just because our wives or girlfriends are affected by this. It's half the population who have this underlying sense of fear everywhere they go. And so it's really on the other half of the population to make them feel less alone at a time like this.
You mentioned there, you know, you guys are having conversations with your mates. For anyone out there who's not hosting a wonderful podcast, how would you suggest they broach this conversation and bring this topic up with their mates?
It's not only the really, really big newsworthy things that happen, it's the micro things that maybe a lot of men don't think is an issue. Like one of the things my girlfriend told me during Me Too was, if you're walking behind a woman on the street and there's just you and her and you're just behind her on the footpath, the decent thing to do is to cross the road and walk on the other side, because there's every chance that you could be making her feel really unsafe. So it's those sorts of conversations, things like that can really, I think, could potentially help men to sort of almost educate each other on what to do and what not to do, really.
We love that. It's great to see men choosing to step up and fight to end this violence. But how do you think we can keep this conversation going?
That's a really, really important question.
I mean, I guess not everyone can start a podcast. That seems like a lot of podcasts.
I think they tried that during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I think it's just to continually remind ourselves as men how privileged we are to not have to worry when we go for a run at night, or even in midday, as we've seen is the case, and continually check that privilege and hold our friends accountable and just keep bringing it up and keep bringing it up. Because, I mean, we've learned through talking about it. I've learned so much in the last week with messages back from people with their thoughts on the conversation. I think when you are very open and very curious, you can learn so much that can just make the world a better place for half the population that are finding it so scary at the moment.
And also the knowledge that the conversations aren't going to be inherently perfect, and I don't think we're going to solve them in conversations solve the problem in little conversations like what we're having. However, silence is never a good thing, and it's really important that we continue to have these conversations to try and affect change over the long term.
Hugh, Josh and Ryan, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for chatting tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.